All hail the New York Giants!
Camera. How about them Giants? How about them Giants? How about them Giants?
Woo! What's happening, people? Welcome to another episode of Giants Rush, where, we're talking Giants football 50 weeks of the year. You guys support us, so we crank this stuff out every single week. And there's a lot to talk about. Waiting on Ryan. Hopefully he pops in pretty soon. Ryan Dunleavy is going to be joining us from the New York Post. I see Dan. I see you guys piling in the room. What's up, Daniel? I hope you guys are well. Lots to do. Lots of going on. We got mini rookie camp, kind of like Chris's specialty. So he's going to talk a little bit about that and some roster moves. Dart, Carter. We're having fun again. I mean, we are literally having some fun again. Ryan will be popping. Just see Ryan popped in the back room. So he's here talking Giants football and some house cleaning on, what the roster is looking like. Chris is always updating us there. I'm going to bring in the guys because, again, there's always plenty to talk about this week because everybody wants to know, what do the new guys look like? All right, should we be excited? Should we temper our expectations? And usually, I need a little bit of help, so I'm going to bring these guys in and see what they think.
Don't miss the fireworks.
There won't be any fireworks.
And here we go.
What's up?
And here we go. There's going to be fireworks tonight because we got Ryan Dunleavy in the house. So there will absolutely be fireworks.
100%, man. Ryan's always bringing his A game to the table when he hangs out with us.
He is. I got the new shirt to wear and for him, since he's being on here tonight, I broke out the new Joker shirt for him.
I know.
Specifically.
I'm starting to worry about your closet full of different like all like purple and dark purple Joker shirts. I'm starting to worry about you, man. And let's bring in Chris because I always need Chris to tell me about what's going on with the roster and if there's anything new happening. Always need the Chris.
Hey, Craig. Hey,
What's
Shoney.
up, man?
Hey,
what's up, Chris?
guys? Good.
Dude, rookie mini camp and Ryan Dunleavy all at the same time.
Amazing. It's amazing Ryan found time for us, man. We appreciate that, right? He found after a busy weekend.
He's rolling. I want to say like he's rolling with the big dogs, but it's more like we're rolling with him.
Oh yeah.
Let's bring in Ryan. Ryan, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Ryan.
What's up, Ryan?
You know how we are. It's the first week of rookie mini camp, so we're like, look, who are we gonna go to? We're going to you.
Yeah, the best time of the year to be. I've never been more optimistic on the Giants. I don't know if that'll be the case on Wednesday when the schedule comes out, but since the draft until right this moment is the most optimistic I've been about the Giants in the 7 years I've covered them.
Nah,
wow.
So you go to work every day. You're having a little bit of fun.
It would be nice to cover a team that the fans are passionate about instead of talking in October about whether they'll have the number one pick in the draft or not. That would be a nice change. That would be a nice change for my work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I like
Yes.
it. I like it. I did speak to Bob, Papa, and Carl on Friday, and our conversation, Ryan, was along the lines of what you just said was the fan base is in dire need of meaningful football in December, in some form or fashion. Or November. Or November.
Before the trees turn.
Because we've been out of it around Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd argue. I would argue. I knew you were out of it on Labor Day, but yeah, I guess.
Wow. Coming in hot already.
But no, I mean, again, yeah. I think that they did everything they could to. If you said what would a smart Giants offseason look like, I would say they've done everything they could, short of trading for Matthew Stafford. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to talk about. A lot of people in the room. Miz is finally in the room, so it's good to see him because Miz and I have been on the Dart thing for a while, so we'll get to that. Let's start off with, like, leading up to the draft, and now after the draft, like, you know, we haven't spoken to you in probably, I don't know, 4 months, maybe 5 months. So definitely different, as you said, different vibe in the building. You bring in Carter, you bring in Dart, and we'll talk about the other guys. What's the vibe in the building like now? It's got to be a little bit more popping because
it is.
You know, there's some what do you want to call them? Personalities?
There are some personalities to this team. Last year's team, look, part of it's losing. Losing drains your personality. And part of it is last year's team was void of leadership. It was if I was on your show last year, I probably was. I told you what was going to happen when they let go of Saquon Barkley and they had some of their leaders, out the door, and then they had other leaders injured. Like last year's team was not full of big personalities. The guys who were healthy, like Brian Burns, was a first-year guy who, no matter what he did in Carolina, didn't have the weight in the Giants locker room yet that he'll have eventually. So like, it was just it was a transition year and you could feel it, and the losing, and like no one knew who was in charge. And you have this great rookie who's making plays and wants the ball. And like, he's not a lead. He doesn't know how to be a leader yet. So it was just a very strange year, and everybody's raving about the rookie class last year. It's like, well, they won 3 games. So how great was that rookie class? So like, it was just a very weird year, and it's a total page turner of an offseason. They've built what should be a top 10 easy defense, put a lot of pressure on Shane Bowen by giving him a lot of really good playmakers. I think they're going to have 6 or 7 different week 1 starters this year than they had last year. And that's including, Abdul Carter in for Kayvon Thibodeau. So they'll have better depth because a lot of last year's guys who were starters aren't out the door. They're on the bench. So like, how do you become a better team who can survive NFL attrition? You turn your starters on a bad team into backups on a better team. So they have better depth. They have a good defense. I'm suspect about the offense, but we can get there. I'm not so sure. The philosophy in the building was very clearly everything's Daniel Jones's fault. We have good players, and with a better quarterback, we would show it. I'm suspect of that, but that's not, that no one wants to hear that right now. That's me pouring cold water on it. I think they're a much improved defensive team. They're improved at quarterback, and they're improved personality and leadership wise.
Well, you just made probably 3, maybe 4 show-stopping statements. Let's talk. Because I saw Sean nodding his head, and I'm sure, Chris, you caught it. You said potentially a top 10 defense. The Giants haven't had identity in 15 years. Now they have an identity with, like, if you really want to, peel back the onion a little bit, it seems like that was the goal, was to give Bowen some guys to make this defense, stop the run, stop the pass, get off the field on 3rd down, and let Russell Wilson do a little cooking. So you're happy with everything they did, I'm assuming, because you're saying top 10. That's a big statement.
I don't think that was necessarily the plan going into it, and I'll give Joe Schoen some credit because I think Joe Schoen pivoted really well. Like, I don't think necessarily he went into the offseason saying, like, we have to build a dynamic defense. I mean, he wanted to spend, I don't know, let's call it $60 million. I don't know the exact number on Will Fries, the New Jersey native guard who went from the Colts to the Vikings, and we got outbid. There was some injury stuff like they weren't sure of, but they were obviously going to make him a pretty big offer, and Minnesota made him a mega offer. So if they get him, then we're not talking about they're not going to have Javon Holland, and they might not have another Chauncey Golston. So then, like, you're not talking about necessarily the same defense, but like he pivoted, which is good. He didn't do what Dave Gettleman did in 2018. It was like he lost. Who was that offensive lineman from Andrew Norwell? Is that who it was? He lost that Andrew Norwell to the Jaguars. And so instead of like redistributing his plan, he just paid Nate Solder because he was like the next best offensive lineman. So like they didn't lose Will Fries and then overpay James Daniels. They were like, okay, who's another impact player? Okay, let's go to safety. So like, I don't necessarily know that they went in saying let's build a top defense, but I think that's what they did. And I think everybody had the wrong John Mara quote on their mind from the end of the season where he said, we need to find our franchise quarterback. Yes, but he also said, I'm tired of seeing teams go up and down the field on us all game long. And we all took that as Shane Bowen's in trouble, but what it ended up being was let's get Shane Bowen some better players.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to back up a second, Ryan, because you talked about the energy in the building, and it seems that with this rookie class, not the UDFAs, but the draft picks, they're a little, well, there's dogs, I'll say that, but they also seem like there's a little bit of they're off their rocker in a good way. Like they're a little bit crazy, right? Have you kind of seen that? Like you had Scatterbo, Carter and Dart with the whole, Anakin and Darth Vader. Even like Marcus Bowe was a little weird at the podium, and so it seems like we needed that. Like I was talking about that a lot. So have you noticed that more so than what we've seen kind of in interviews and stuff? Like, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, to be honest, I've only been around them during those interviews. Like we're not.
Right.
Like at this time of year, we're not in the locker room or whatnot. So I've only been around them. I've been in person, what you've seen on, the internet or whatever, those videos. But I do think it's interesting. Like Carter said, he wants to wreak havoc. And Darius Alexander said, I love taking my opponent's will and just watching them go back to the sideline and not know what to say to their coach. And Scatterbo has the whole running into telephone poles when he was a kid. And his older brother picked on him, and Marcus Bowe said he likes to put people on the ground and demoralize them. I do think this class has some personality. I think this class overall has some edge. I think there's some toughness. And now look, it's hard for rookies to set a tone in the NFL, but sure. I do think the Giants, I would not say they've been missing toughness because I don't think that's ever fair to question an NFL player's toughness. They play a game where they wreck their bodies. Every single person in the NFL is tough. I always roll my eyes when Dable does the smart, tough, dependable, because every one of them is tough. Show me an NFL player who's not tough. But I do, so I'm not going to say tough. I think the team might have been missing some edge last year when things got tough. And I do think this is a group that collectively has probably been backed into a corner before and knows how to get out of it.
All right, well, let's talk about this one. You did mention Carter and Thibs basically, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you alluded to Carter getting more snaps than Thibs, or putting Thibs in maybe in a pass rusher role or a, I don't want to say a backup role, but so what are you seeing out of Carter, and what made you make that statement? What are you seeing, hearing, or thinking that's going to be a shift in this defense? Because we all know Carter's not sitting on the bench.
Correct.
And we know that we can, maybe on third down and fourth down, he can play inside, but everything alludes to him being on the edge and being more of a dynamic player than a downhill guy. So what made you make that statement? What's on your mind with Thibs getting less snaps?
So third down, they're all going to be on the field. Okay. So let's just get that out of the way right there. Shane Bowen's going to have packages where he has Thibodeau, Burns, and Carter on the field on third down. Maybe it's Carter lining up in the middle. Maybe it's only two down linemen and three edge, whatever. He's going to have packages where they're all on the field in a pass rushing situation. They're not going to take one of those guys off the field on a 3rd and 5. It's not going to happen. Okay. First and second down is the interesting thing. And I think Thibodeau is the natural person to lose some snaps because Abdul Carter's going to play a ton. They just invested the 3rd round pick in him. He's a better pure pass rusher than Kayvon. He's got more versatility than Kayvon, and Brian Burns is their big investment. He's the signature move this franchise has made. So, look, Kayvon was playing, I want to say it's 80% or more of the snaps in 27 of his first 43 games. That's not really sustainable. So, like, I don't think it's a bad thing to, like, they got to get Kayvon to buy into this. And I think picking up his 5th-year option helps because, you know, obviously for guys to buy into things, they're like, what's the financial ramifications? But I think you could explain to Kayvon that Kayvon at 70% of the snaps is going to be a more productive player than Kayvon at 85% of the snaps. Because what that additional, let's call it 10 snaps a game, he's dog tired. And he's not able to play, you know, he's saving stuff for the fourth quarter. Now it's like, hey, go play 45 snaps at a high level instead of 62 snaps at a, you know, where you can't give it your all 15 of them. Because we're putting Timon Fox and Quincy Roche in the game. Like, so yeah, I think that you could look at a situation where you can maximize all of them by putting them all on the field for 70% of the snaps, or Brian Burns and Carter for 85 or 82, and Kayvon for 68, something like that. I think that's probably what you're going to get. And look, let's call it what it is, guys. Thibodeau missed 5 games last year, and Brian Burns might have been more hurt than anybody on the team and just gutted through 17 games with a toe injury. So, like, it's not a terrible. They're probably not all going to be in the lineup for 17 games. So when one guy is out, now you have a very capable starter instead of sliding in, you know, like an Azeez Ojulari or somebody. Like, now you have a guy who's started. The only thing is, like, at the end of the day, there's this column in the stat sheet, GS, game started, and I think Kayvon Thibodeau's GS is going to be lower than everybody else's, but I still think he'll have plenty of opportunity to make plays.
And Chris, we saw even in camp Burns get dinged up and pushed through it. Remember?
Oh, so he was on a sideline. He was on a sideline, and so, you know, he'd be coming right back in, and that showed so much that, you know, played hurt so many times, and there he is, you know, leading the way even in training camp, which you didn't expect him to.
Yeah, right. Because Chris, we went to the Detroit joint practice, and he got all banged up.
He was on the ground. We were like, oh boy, this isn't good, and then he came back right back
and then
in.
he gutted it out. So yeah, he does have that extra gear.
You also got to figure out how good Carter is against the run, right? Like, we don't know how good he is against the run. Like, Kayvon takes a lot of pride in his run defense. There's mixed reviews on how good it is, but I know he takes a lot of pride in it. So we got to see how good Carter is against the run. Burns obviously does. So we got to see how good, maybe all their strengths are a little bit different, and they can be, like I said, they could be used in different roles. I would not expect, I know there are people out there who are like, oh, Abdul Carter will just be like a second middle linebacker, and we could just play all 3 of them on all 3 downs. That's not happening. He's not like taking Micah McFadden's job. And like, you're going to have a situation where all 3 of them are on the field every play together. That's not happening. It'll be more rotational.
Yeah. And we've talked about it too, Chris, right? Where, you know, you've got options of Okereke being on 1st and 2nd down, because last year they were going to put Simmons in on 3rd and 4th down, and it didn't work out. And then Ryan Okereke was hurt for half the year, so you need him to come back healthy, right? So
he's one of the biggest. Everybody talks about those 3 in decks. Bobby Okereke, if he plays like he did his under Wink versus how he played last year, that's a huge piece to the defense. I mean, you can make a case that as good as those 4 guys are as players, value-wise, Okereke is right there because he runs the whole thing. He's a run stopper. He can play pass coverage. He has a very different skill set than the other guys, even though he made a lot of plays on the ball under Wink. He has he could complement those guys very well if he figures out a spot in Bowen's defense better than the 2 of them figured it out last year.
Ryan, you know, by all accounts, you know, we're hearing that Abdul Carter is really going to be utilized almost like a Micah Parsons. We even heard Dable even mention, without mentioning Parsons' name, alluding to players in the NFC East similar to him, and we kind of know who he's talking about. Going into training camp, I know we're a little ways away, but going into training camp, and we've seen in the past, you know, with the physicalness and the thumping that they do, and they don't bring guys to the ground, knowing that Dable, kind of on the hot seat still, do you anticipate this defense playing a little bit more physical in training camp and going a little bit further than we've seen in the past in terms of what they expect, in terms of, I would say tackling, but more physicality during training camp from the defense.
I really don't. I don't think what's the cliche, like a zebra doesn't change its stripes or whatever. Like Dayball's not a push you hard. And he's not Joe Judge. He's not like a push you to the limits in training camp. Parcellsian coach. Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think they'll have long grueling practices or they'll beat each other up in pads.
Right.
No,
understandable.
Not his style. And the whole franchise has whiplash from injuries. Like they just can't believe how injured they are every year. Yep. So like they would have a nervous breakdown if somebody got hurt.
Understood. The concern for me and many Giant fans is that the tackling is so poor those first few games of the earlier in the season. So,
they have better
there's so many new pieces. Yes. And there's new pieces as well. So I know we got to see how these new pieces mesh together, but that would be my concern is just that the tackling coming right out of the gates, they're ready to roll with the tackling because we do see a lot of poor pass and across the league, not just the Giants, but we see it across the league, offensive line play and tackling being an issue.
I would agree. I think I'd say tackling is a problem in the NFL pretty much all year long nowadays, but certainly the first 3 or 4 weeks. But I don't think more practices are going to change that for the Giants. I think they have better players. So like Paulson and Debo shouldn't miss as many tackles as Darnay Holmes used to. Like that's just shouldn't happen. So
right.
Well, let's talk about our guy Dart. So of course, love to know what you see so far, what your opinion is, and I'll preface it with this. So, and Sean and I have been going round and round and round with this for months now. Believe it or not, and these guys will back me up. I've been a Dart guy since he left USC. Now, and I can't take credit for it because at the time, my 14-year-old turned me on to him. So I've been watching him for the last 3 years. I'm also on the other side. Sean, what's the first thing I tell you? What is the number one issue that he has the last 3 years?
Footwork.
Yep. Like he's got he can be very lazy with his footwork.
That's actually that's a terrific observation by that shows your football.
Yeah.
So
well,
go ahead,
again,
finish.
I watched a lot of it, right? And I said
that
these are my 5 quick things. One is he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He reminds me of a bigger Baker Mayfield. Okay, yes, he's got some. If you want to go old school, he's got a lot of Sims in him, no doubt about it. But for today's game, he plays like Baker Mayfield. He's a little bit of a gunslinger. He can throw those little small windows, so he forces a lot of passes where he shouldn't. But the other side of the coin is, right, and this is the one that I like, Ryan, is the fans that don't watch Ole Miss, that don't watch the SEC. He says he's a one-read quarterback. In case you haven't looked it up, and I know you're busy, but if you have looked it up, the dude threw for almost 12,000 yards and 82 touchdowns. You couldn't possibly be a one-read QB if throwing for 12,000 yards and 82 touchdowns. So I like what he brings to the table. Is he going to need to get quicker feet out of the pocket? Is he going to, because again, he's an athlete. You get away with this stuff sometimes in college that you can't in the pros. But, it's good that he's going to sit behind Russ. So I wanted to, and I love he's going to learn. And Russ got a lot of similarities between those two. So again, I guess the question is I know what I see and know. I know he's going to need some time. I have no idea if his game is going to translate. I can only hope. What are you seeing?
Okay, so I'll tell you, I'm just going to got a lot of thoughts here. I'll start with it's the perfect situation for him. If he was somebody who had to go in and play right away, like if he was on the Saints right now, I'd be very worried for him because I think he needs a situation where he can develop. So Giants gave him that with Wilson and Winston. So I think that's perfect. Okay. To me so now I'll go next. I'll hit off field. I think he is a breath of fresh air. Like he is, going to get in guys' ears, on his teammates' ears, which we saw Daniel Jones never did that. Everybody was always perfect. It was always his fault. No, Jackson Dart's going to let you know if you screw up. From a front-facing perspective, he has personality, he has charisma. I've heard him talk 3 times now, and the number one thing I think is if this guy can play, he's going to be everywhere. Like he is going to be a Jalen Brunson star in New York if he can play. If he can play. Because he has the charisma, he has the personality, he's anecdotal, he's funny. He made me laugh 3 times in 7 minutes the other day. What does that mean? I don't know. It means this. I'll tell you what it means. He's comfortable in his own skin. And I've been around Zach Wilson. I've been around Daniel Jones. I've been around plenty of guys who are not comfortable in their own skin. Do not take that lightly. That is not something that's like you can't force it. And he's comfortable. He gets it, right? Like for a kid from Utah who like you didn't know what he was going to be like. No, he's ready for the moment. So like on and off the field. And I mean that like with teammates. Now, play wise, you hit on the 2 things that keep coming back to me, which are the footwork. I've had 2 quarterback coaches and a trainer both say to me, like, this kid's footwork needs a lot of work. Like, not that it can't be done, but like, it's not an overnight fix. Well, okay, he's going to have 5 months before he has to play in a game. So 6 months maybe before he has to play in a game. So like that, they don't seem overly worried. They think Daboll can coach that. Like they seem to think they'll get there with the footwork. But right now, that is the number one thing everybody knocks him for. Yeah. And then the other thing, like you said, the one read offense. I had somebody be like, well, that's actually a big problem. A scout actually told me that's a big problem. Like, you know, if you've never had to go through progressions, you don't have the same internal clock, like that's going to be a problem in the NFL. And then I had a quarterback coach tell me like, nope, not a problem at all. I actually think he sees it well. I actually think it's better the way he does it because he has so much diagnose experience pre-snap, and that's actually harder to do. So now his post-snap diagnosis will be easier because he knows how to do it pre-snap. So like total opposite ends of the spectrum between a coach and a scout. So that I think will be interesting to see. He throws. I thought he had good arm strength throwing from like one hash to the opposite sideline, so to speak. So that popped. People knock his deep ball. We'll see how that is. Great athleticism. Should be able to run a little bit. Like we saw.
I've seen him run dudes over.
Like we saw with Daniel Jones, right? That was a strength of Daniel Jones. Should be able to run. We're not talking about, Lamar Jackson here, but gives you an element. And the snapping stuff, people said basically to be functional, he could be functional tomorrow in doing a snap count without clapping. He could be functional tomorrow. It could take him a full year to learn how to use it to an advantage in terms of like getting guys to lean or jump or bail out of a coverage. Okay. That could take a full year. And I'm trying to think if there was something else about his actual game. And this, I haven't really looked into this much, but somebody mentioned this to me when I was making my calls around. Your audience can do this for me. They said, look at his numbers against good teams and look at his numbers against bad teams, and they're startlingly different. So I'm going to have to do that.
If you do it, just only because I've watched 3 years of him. If you do it, don't do it just on 2024. Make sure you look at 23, because I remind people he beat Jaden Daniels with 5 touchdowns in LSU the year before, and everybody discounts it. I'm like, did you 5 touchdowns? Come on, right? So yeah,
and keep in mind too with the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Craig. You know what, Ryan? His flaw is that Baker Mayfield thing. He can throw this small window, so he keeps trying to throw it. Like, what's that movie we all love? Tin Cup. You ever seen Tin Cup?
I've never seen it, but you know me in movies. I don't watch movies.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Dang, I forgot again. Right. Anyway, so Tin Cup is basically about Kevin Costner trying to make this hit, and he hits it like 7 times and misses it. Dart has the issue where he's like, I'm throwing this small window, and I'm going to get it. So against bad teams, he's trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And Kiffin did not help him. Kiffin didn't step in and go like this, yo, time out.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
In the pros, they won't give him that kind of leash.
But here's the thing I would say about that is like, I thought Daniel Jones did that as a rookie. Like I thought he was aggressive as a rookie, and then they coached it out of him. So I don't want to see it coached out of Jackson Dart.
Okay.
They have to have the right head coach and right coordinator, and we'll see if they do. That teaches him to walk the fine line because you don't want to be Brett Favre without the Brett Favre arm strength or whatever, where you're jamming into tight windows and you're getting intercepted. But I also don't want to see him neutered into somebody that he isn't, which is what happened to Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And keep in mind when you look at it too, Ryan, a couple things. So that UGA game this year, it was a good game, but he got injured. But that's a good with his toughness and
he
his
came back out, right? Yeah.
Right. Leadership, played injured that game. The Florida game was his worst game this season by far, but just bad decisions. So it was more of like just throwing the ball up there sometimes. But I'd be curious to see because I mean, watching him, he played well against really good teams. So if you're looking at numbers, like is he going to put up 600 yards against a UGA or
but a 250 versus a UGA, I'm just numbers wise, legit 250 and 2 touchdowns versus UGA is in many ways more impressive than 320 and 3 touchdowns against Jacksonville State. Or
exactly. That was my point. So that's what probably people were looking at, like, oh, he put up 600 yards versus Mercer and only 300 against UGA.
Yeah, I mean, I trust the guy who told me that is a big time film watcher, so I gotta go back and he watches more film than I ever will, so I got to go back and dissect that. But that's just like I said, I was just emptying the notebook on things I heard about him. So
yeah, no, that was good things.
So far, though, good thumbs up. What you're saying?
I mean, he hasn't played against pass rush yet, but
I just meant like it's rookie camp, so it's always
love the attitude, the energy, the personality, like the arm strength across the field, like that he gathered everybody the night before rookie mini camp, a bunch of guys he knows he's never going to play with, and made sure that they were on the everybody he played with in rookie minicamp got cut except the other draft picks, right? Mm-hmm, so like literally, he was like 5 former team. 5 of those guys are going to be teammates. 5 of those guys might actually play with him in an NFL regular season game. And he gathered the whole offense to like go over plays the night before. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that at this point of the year you better be doing. But the fact that he is doing it shows some leadership. So, you guys probably all saw the clip that he was wearing like his younger sister's heart necklace or whatever. Like if that doesn't tell me you're comfortable with your own skin, you're wearing your younger sister's fake necklace around a bunch of guys who are gonna, bust your chops all day in your locker. I mean, he's like, what do I care? Like, this is my good luck charm. Like, that's who I am. And if you don't like it, tough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, that was like, he didn't come up with some bullshit story. He didn't say, I don't want to talk about that. He's like, no, here's who I am. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. That's great. That's who you are. Like, I respect it, and your teammates are going to respect it.
Yeah. And to back up to another point you made that I thought was really good, Ryan, was talking about like the one read thing, which Kiffin's system, it in ways it's kind of similar to Dayball because the pre-snap is, and he schemes to get guys open the same way Kiffin does. So if Dart can do that pre-snap and then he can find the open guy, because that's been the problem the last couple of years is we haven't had quarterbacks who hit the open guy. So I think that is an easier transition for Dart coming into that. If he's used to finding the guy who's open, if he can do that at Ole Miss, I don't think a lot of people know that, that similarity with there. So I thought it was a good point you brought up.
The scout who told me that was going to be a problem, I brought it to a coach, and the coach said, I think that might be a Lane Kiffin thing, like his quarterbacks throughout his, and I don't know Lane Kiffin. I haven't followed his career enough. That might be more of a Lane Kiffin-ism that it applies to his quarterbacks more so than specific to Jackson Dart, because they didn't see that in Dart as much as say Matt Corral or other quarterbacks that Kiffin has worked with.
Yep.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, Ryan, just to change gears for a brief second, the Giants are just about $1 million over the cap, or under the cap right now. You have some cuts that are probably going to happen or restructures. A lot of the talk has been Roche Nunez out there still, who's commanding a decent salary. And also Gano. They haven't brought in another kicker other than Jude McEnany. So give me your thoughts on, creating some more cap space. And also in terms of Gano, do you feel like there could be, whether it's a USFL kicker or somebody else that's on the street coming in, or do you feel like Gano is pretty much going to be his job at $7 million a year?
I got two thoughts there. One, I don't think now look, Nunez Roches could be cut at the end of training camp. I don't see, based on performance, but they're not going to cut somebody like that, a good depth player, veteran, a good personality before training camp. They have plenty of restructures they could do. Mm-hmm. This is like the benefit of having good players is like they can just take Brian Burns' contract, turn some of the salary into a signing bonus, and voila, you have $10 million in salary cap space. Same thing with Dexter Lawrence, same thing with Andrew Thomas. They have players with big contracts who you can turn their salaries into signing bonuses, and you manipulate the cap, and they could have $20 million in cap space. Now, look, you're kicking it down the road, and that becomes a problem if you eventually want to cut those guys, but you'd like to think Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Andrew Thomas are going to play out their contracts. Right. So I don't see the cap space as an issue at all. It has been in the past. Obviously, Joe spent his first year digging out of a bad cap situation. He likes to say he did 2 or 3 years. I don't buy that. He created that mess with Daniel Jones. He doesn't get a pass for that. But yes, they have the space where I don't think they have to cut anybody. Now, Graham Gano is a different story. They should bring in competition for Graham Gano, who has been bad and injured the last 2 years. When not injured, he's been bad. So, and he was as good a kicker as there was for 4 years with the Giants, right? This regime does not. Now here you get a little bit of old Ryan back. This regime is so stubborn.
Yes.
You and I can see it right here, and they refuse to see it. Like Josh Azudu as the swing tackle last year. It's like, this isn't going to work.
Right, Ryan, 2 years ago, Eric Gray catching punts who never did it before.
Correct.
Stuff like that.
Another great example. And they just ram it down your throat. And it's like, no, this isn't going to work. So, yes, they should bring in a kicker for to challenge Graham Gano. I would be surprised if they do, based on their history of loyalty, digging their feet in, whatever you want to call it. I would be surprised. I expect Graham Gano will be the kicker for the first month of the season. And if he's good, they'll be doing I told you so's. And if he's bad, they'll have to bring somebody in, and the media will be doing I told you so's. Sure. But it is certainly a situation worth monitoring. That I am surprised, not that they haven't cut him, because I wasn't necessarily thinking they'd cut him, but I'm surprised they've done nothing to address the position.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's do this real quick, Chris. Okay, go ahead, Chris. I
agree with Ryan. And you know what? It's not even the fact that he's probably going to kick well. It's the injury part that you mentioned, just because at 38 years old, you're seeing a pattern here of these minor injuries, which are setting him back.
I promised I'd get you out early, so I got 2 quick questions. One was all 3 of us and the other guys, Spartan, Mike, and Truth, we're all super excited about Alexander on what he brings to the table. And we had been talking about him for a while, right? Between we had a Senior Bowl scout on from our lads who told us about him. We with Dave, and we kind of ran with that. Really excited they got him. So if you could touch on Alexander, on where he fits. And then also too is something about Scatterboo reminds me of Victor Cruz. It's just there's something about this cat that everybody's going to love. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's the smaller dude or it's again, just if you could touch on those 2 guys, because I feel like Scatterboo's going to become a fan favorite, and I really am excited that Alexander brings some nastiness to the D-line, which we've needed forever.
Yeah. I could probably give you 10 minutes if you want to get to some fan stuff after this too, because I know there was some fan stuff. But those 2 guys real quick. Alexander, he prefers to play the 3 technique. I talked to his defensive coordinator at Toledo. Was very high on his pass rush ability, very high on his maturity, driven by the fact that he didn't really have a father figure, Alexander, and he wants to make a good life for his 6-year-old. I think something I learned a long time ago is the more intrinsic motivations you have in the NFL, the better. That's what keeps you out there working the extra 20 minutes or whatnot. So, when he won't be out, making the plans to go to the bar that night, he might be in the weight room a little extra because he has a son to provide for. So very motivated, good pass rusher, huge human being. Like I was looking at him and he's not Dexter Lawrence big, but he was like, whoa, this guy is bigger than I thought and he can move. So that was my impression seeing him in person. Cam Scatabo, I'll tell you, I was shocked how small he is. Like he is 5'9.5". You can see why some teams are skeptical that his power running style will hold up in the physical NFL. You could see why that is, but I agree with you. I think he will be a fan favorite. Every fan base loves the small guy underdog, right? Everybody loves that. What do Giants fans love? Like, what are Giants fans excited about with Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns? It's like, oh, this is our new JPP, Justin Tuck, OCU Manure. Like Giants fans love history, right? They're like basically paleontologists. So like, so it's like Scattaboo and Tyrone Tracy are the next Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, or the next Tiki Barber and Ron Dane. Like it's like, oh, a thunder and a lightning. Like I get it, right? The only problem is Ron Dane and Brandon Jacobs are massive human beings, and the thunder in this case is Cam Scatabo, who's not a massive human being. But I do think he's the kind of guy to run somebody over and then stand over him and talk trash, and Giants fans will love that. So I do think he will be a fan favorite kind of guy, and he's got some edge to him. He's not going to put up with nonsense from me, teammates, opponents, whatever. So that'll be nice. And this is what they wanted. You know how I feel about letting Saquon Barkley go. I think it was a massive mistake. I think the world saw that I was right last year. And this is what they wanted to do. When they let him go, they wanted a cheap, complimentary backfield. Well, now they have it. So we'll see how it works out.
And I would have to think that with getting Tracy a little less snaps, keeping him fresh, is going to only help Tracy,
Old Ryan's got to come back for a second, though. Devin Singletary, what's his job now? Why did you spend that $6 million? Like, what is his role on this team?
We could go. Okay, so you went old school. I'll have to go old school then, because if we're going there, remember they did succeed with the Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, is he Derek Ward?
We don't.
The problem was
there's not a lot of Earth, but Earth is your Scattaboo. Your Wind would be Singletary, and your Fire would be.
The problem is Derek Ward was happy to be the third guy in that that trio, and Devin Singletary wasn't happy to be the second guy in a duo last year. He isn't going to be happy to be the third guy.
And it's a cap hit, right, Ryan? I mean, it's a $7 million cap hit. I think if you let him go, so that's probably it.
How about Winston? Is he staying? He's not going to get moved, right? Because of this whole car thing.
I mean, look, anybody can get moved. If the Saints called and said, we'll give you a 3rd round pick for Jameis Winston, I think the Giants would do that in a second. But we'll give you a 6th round pick for Jameis Winston is a lot less appealing, right? So I think it would depend on the market. I don't think the Saints are looking to give up a big asset for somebody when they can just go sign I would have to look at who's out there, but like a Ryan Tannehill or somebody like that who's out, Carson Wentz, who I know technically retired but could unretire. Why? Is Jameis Winston any better than those guys? Like, why would you give up an asset just because he played in New Orleans previously? I would be surprised. Now, look, if you told me he's moved in September or October, that wouldn't surprise me. But I believe the plan is this: Russell Wilson for most of the season, maybe all the season. And then if you're terrible, you can play Jackson Dart at the end of the season, get his feet wet. And then next year, Russell Wilson, see you later, go somewhere else. Jameis Winston, you're signed for a 2-year contract, not an accident. And then you are the caretaker backup for Jackson Dart next year as a rookie. So I don't think they're in a rush to trade Jameis Winston. He has a 2-year contract to be here with Jackson Dart, who, as we've all seen, Jackson Dart, like the quarterback he was most excited to work with, like at the NFL Combine, was Jameis Winston. Well, now he gets to work with him. I don't think they're going to be in a rush to trade the guy that is supposed to be Jackson Dart's shadow or whatever, or Dart's supposed to be his shadow for the next 2 years. I don't think they're going to be in a rush to do that unless they got an offer that knocked their socks off. Remember, this is what they tried to do with Tyrod Taylor. They signed him to a 2-year deal thinking they only had Daniel Jones for 1 year, and they were going to let Daniel Jones go draft a guy and have Tyrod Taylor in his second year be the caretaker. And then Daniel Jones played well enough to get a $160 million extension to blow the whole thing up. But what they're doing with Winston is, I think, what they were trying to do with Tyrod.
What happens if Russ wins?
Then everybody's happy, right? I mean, that's a good problem to have. When was the last time the Giants had a good problem? Like, great, the Giants won. Like,
does he get a new deal? Let's say this year, let's say you missed the wild card, but you're 8-9. Does he get a new deal?
Nope. Jackson Dart and Jameis Winston. Nope. Now tell me they went
playoffs.
Tell me they went 10-7. You tell me they went 10-7, that might be different. But 8-9, no playoffs, no, new era.
So playoffs, Russ gets a deal. No playoffs, he's gone.
I mean, it would depend how he played, but you would think if they went 10-7, he played pretty well. So,
yeah.
I mean, he went 10-7 for the Steelers last year, and they let him go, but he wasn't the reason they went 10-7. You would think he would be a bigger reason if this team went 10-7. The team's not going 10-7 though, so it doesn't matter. The schedule release comes out Wednesday.
Yeah, it's just how did that happen? How on the God's green earth do we have a 3-win season and get the worst SOS there is? Strength of schedule has a lot to do with how many games you win. I don't get it.
It doesn't. Only 3 of the games have anything to do with that's
No, I meant like
division.
Yeah, I meant like just how do we get the luck of the draw for that?
Well, only 3 of the games have anything to do with where you finished in the standings. And the 3 games that have anything to do with where you finished in the standings are the Patriots, who is one of the winnable games on the schedule, the 49ers, who somehow were a last place team. That's a bad break. You got a team that was in the Super Bowl 3 times or whatever in the last 5 years, and happen to have a bad year, and you draw them. And who's the other? Oh,
is it
Carolina?
Vikings?
Okay. In Carolina, that's one of the winnable, or not Carolina.
Saints.
No, because you play that whole division, right? So
you play the Vikings division too. Okay.
Vikings division. So the other one is the Bears. So 2 of the winnable games are those games. So
Okay. So a couple fan questions that people wanted me to ask of you, Ryan. A 2-part. I'll make it quick. So I know we kind of talked about the defense earlier, but in season, do you think now with the players that they have, are they going to be more aggressive since they have better players there?
Yes. Yeah, I think they will be. In season, yes. In training camp, like Chris asked me before, no, I don't think you'll see like a more aggressive training camp. But yes, in season, I think you'll see. That's what Adebo does. He plays man coverage, right? So I think you'll see a more aggressive blitzing man-to-man coverage than you saw last year. I think that wasn't about who Shane Bowen is. I think talking to people around Shane Bowen, that wasn't reflective of who Shane Bowen is. That was his glue and tape way to hold an under-talented team secondary together.
Right. Makes sense with that, especially when you had the injuries and as the season went on, right? Okay. And then the other one is I know there's one UDFA who has stood out so far from what I've heard with his size and the speed, Daquan Felton, right?
Yeah. Felton, that's what I would say.
And then do you one, how good of a shot do you think he has to make an impact with that receiving core? And is there any other ones? I know it was only a couple of days, but any other names we should kind of keep an eye out on?
Yeah, it's not fair for me because I was only there one day. I didn't go Saturday, so I was helping out on Nick. I was helping out on Nick's Saturday. So
how dare you?
I was only there Friday.
Okay.
So it would be unfair for me to say really anybody else. And plus, like an offensive lineman or or somebody like that can't really stand out in something like this because it's really just a passing camp. So, and sure enough, they kept the rookie tryout DB from Mercer today.
Yep.
Moore. CJ Moore.
They did?
Yeah.
TJ Moore, right?
TJ
Moore.
Moore. So I guess if I wanted to be a phony, I would be like, TJ Moore had a really good camp. I can't tell you I noticed him at all.
Right.
So no, I mean,
he plays special teams, right?
Yeah, but to answer your question, I do think there's room for a undrafted rookie receiver to make the 53-man roster. A couple of them will probably be on the practice squad, whether that's Daquan Felton or Jordan Bly or
Juice Wells.
Or Juice Wells. Yeah, I think there is room on the current roster for one of those guys who has a special teams, contribution to make the 53-man roster. They did very little at wide receiver this offseason. So I think one of those guys has a spot.
Yeah, because Felton's like, what, 6'5", 6'4"?
Yeah, he has an element they don't really have. Yeah.
And he runs a 4.40, so he's tall and fast, which they don't have somebody that's tall and fast.
But 257 picks later, no one took him, so he can't be that.
Yeah.
So he's tall and fast, but there's got to be something else there,
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt's tall and fast too.
Yeah.
The question I had earlier in the show, someone asked about the offensive line. What is, because you're not hot on the offensive line, you're not hating on it, but you're just saying like it could have used a little bit more juice because that wasn't infused. What does that starting offensive line look like now? I mean, for me, not my question, but if it was my question, I would also say this team lives and breathes and dies with Andrew Thomas being healthy.
Most important player, most irreplaceable player on the team for the third year running, Andrew Thomas. I think if the 5 starters play, and that's Van Roten right now, then they're an average offensive line, which for the Giants is better than it's been in a decade, right? So I don't think they're a great offensive line. I think it's an average offensive line, like put them 16th if I'm doing offensive line rankings. Like, I think that's about what they are. Illuminor played at a good level last year. I don't know if he'll play at that level again. And John Michael Schmitz has been bad for 2 years. There's no way around it. You got to hope he gets better. Van Roten played every snap last year and knows Brasillo's techniques and schemes really well, so that's an advantage. So I think they're fine. Andrew Thomas goes down, it'll be a really below average offensive line again. Even with Hudson, the swing tackle they brought in. The thing to watch is Evan Neal. They want Evan Neal to win the job. Stop me if you heard this before. Just like they wanted Azudu to win a job, just like they wanted Neal to win a job last year. Like, they want Evan Neal to win the job. If it's close, he's going to get the start.
Can he win it?
I don't know. I have never seen him play guard, so I don't know. Like, they want him to win the job. So, like, if it's close, he's going to win the job, and then Greg Van Roten will be your swing interior guy. He'll be the backup left guard, center, and right guard, and that would actually be great for the Giants because then Van Roten could push John Michael Schmitz. But I don't know if he can win it. I've never seen him play guard. If he plays guard like he played tackle, then no, he's not going to win it. So, like,
and Runyon's back healthy, right? Because I know Runyon has an off-season surgery.
He did supposedly have an off-season surgery, but I mean, I don't know I won't really know how healthy it is till I see him in OTAs, but I haven't heard asking around. I haven't heard anything that would make me think training camp's an issue. So
I think the other thing, go ahead, Greg.
No, I'm just saying. So it's Thomas, it's Runyon, it's JMS.
It's Van Roten with Neal nipping at his heels and
Illuminor. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that might be going overlooked is its continuity. When's the last time the Giants have had the same offensive line, 5 guys, 2 years in a row, and the second year under Brasillo, right? So that could be something that could push them up into higher ranking as well. And listen, if we had a top 16 offensive line, like, yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, that'd be really good. So I do like, because I had mentioned that before too, Ryan, about if GVR goes over the center and pushes JMS, that makes him better. And even if GVR starts at center, he played really well, in my opinion, at center last year. So it's not a bad thing if Neal wins that guard spot. So
as long as he wins it on merit.
Right.
Yeah. Not on where you were drafted.
correct, or how much you're getting paid.
Right.
Go ahead, Chris. You're up.
Let's see. Well, you know what, Ryan? Talking about the offensive line, one of the things we've seen, and I used to have a joke saying, every week one game the Giants would play, you'd always hear the announcer say, "Well, this is the first time this Giants offensive line has played together all preseason." They were so to that point, Ryan. Do you anticipate them? Going a little bit further in training camp in terms of the preseason games as a unit, or do you see kind of the same thing where they're going to play a few drives and then start pulling guys?
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing as I said to your training camp question. I would say, no, they'll probably play a few drives and pull guys. Like pretty much the same offense, minus Russ, who's done this for 100 years and knows how to get his work in and build his chemistry in practices. Like the Giants are, like I'll say it again, the Giants are terrified of injuries as much as anybody I've been around. They're terrified of their season being wrecked by injuries. So I don't think they'll do anything to put anybody in harm's way.
Yeah, and once again, Ryan, the thinking is across the NFL is that the first month, and Sean alluded to it, is that the offensive line pass protection is horrible.
Yeah.
So, is it worth the risk? Some say yes, some say no, but you saw like Bill Belichick, back in the day, always want to play these guys a little further in preseason. And I get it with the injuries, but man, as Giant fans, we have seen this offensive line struggle in pass protection early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like the NFL in general is going to those first 4 games are almost like an extended preseason as it was. Like,
yeah, people say that.
Right?
Yeah, people always say that, except like when you're 9-8 and miss the playoffs, then that September loss you had wasn't really a preseason loss.
Although I will say, Ryan, the inter-squad, or not the inter-squad, but the scrimmages with the other teams, I think that has more of a benefit with the ones against the ones and controlling that and be able to pull guys when you want and blowing the whistle.
Yeah. Right. Do me a favor. Remind me of that on like May 26th. Send yourself a note because I got to ask. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they're doing those this year or what. I got to find that out, especially new Jets coach. I got to find that out if they're doing those this year because I don't know about that. And actually, we'll probably find out Wednesday, right? We'll probably find out with when the preseason schedule comes out. We'll probably find out if they're doing any joint practices. So that's a good. I hadn't thought of that.
Last thing for me is the receiving core.
I got to run. So what do you got?
I was going to say receiving core. Can Neighbors do the same thing he did last year with Russ and better? Or is it, is Russ going to be a guy that spreads the ball around?
Neighbors can be as good. I don't know if he'll get 75 targets in 14 games again.
Yeah, I don't think Russ has had a guy like that before.
Yeah, I mean, DK Metcalf, but he also had Tyler Lockett. So, I mean, last year's offense, that was like a product of we don't trust anybody else, and our quarterbacks I can boss these quarterbacks. I'm going to boss Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock into just throw the ball to Neighbors whenever he's open. Like Russell Wilson's not going to do that. He's going to go through. He knows where the plays are supposed to go, and he's not just going to panic and unload the ball to Malik Neighbors. So, I would be surprised if he got as many targets because I think that was a product of bad quarterback play, bad offensive line, rushing the throws, wanting to feed the beast, keep him happy because they were losing. Like you'd like to think they're going to win a little bit more, score a little bit more, so he'll be happy with. He doesn't need 13 targets to be happy. He can be just as productive and just as good, but I would be surprised if the target number was as high.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us. I know you got to go. We kept you a little bit longer than normal. I apologize for that, but you've always been so kind to us that we will call you in May to remind you about that. And we got.
We're all getting dinner in North Jersey at some point.
Yes,
yeah, we are. I'm working on Chris and I are working on a calendar right now.
Okay. All right,
Ryan.
Awesome, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.
See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.
All right, gentlemen. A lot of things he said there. Anything you want to end the show with? I will say the thing that jumped out to me the most was top 10 defense. We haven't had a top 10 defense in forever. That is pretty bold statement. You know what I mean? But he must feel pretty confident that room is just has not only better personalities, it's got better personalities, better players, and that the scheme is going to reflect the players. Because you could have personality goes nowhere. You could have talent and it can go nowhere. And you could have a scheme and it goes nowhere. Sounds like they have all three. So, Sean, start with you. What's your thoughts on what you just heard?
Well, I'm gonna pull a Ryan here, and I'm gonna pull a King Rush here because you talked about being on the dart train for a while. Ryan talked about how he told the whole world about Barkley, and he was right about that. So Ryan brought up that this scheme and what Bowen ran had a lot to do with the players, and that was not indicative of who he is as a DC, which I had been saying for how long? How many times? How many times in this
I don't
show
know,
and
3
Twitter
or
and everything?
4.
Right? Like a lot. And so that was that stood out to me that he said you're going to see a lot different scheme next year because he has the players that he wants to have. So the onus is on Bowen, no doubt about it. But like I said, I really thought because of the injuries and where everything else was and the type of players, that's why we saw what we saw last year. So that stood out to me that he mentioned that as well.
I like it. That's a very good observation from you. Appreciate that. Chris, you're going to end the show. What did you get out of that? Because he said some really good stuff as always, but he's optimistic, which is super cool. But he said a bunch of stuff. I mean, he dropped a bunch of things in there. If you really dig in a little bit, even tomorrow when we send some clips out, we got about 4 or 5 bangers in there.
Yeah, I mean, third down, you're going to expect, like we saw with the Giants in 2007, 2008, in those years with everybody on the field, the playmakers, Thibodeau, the fact that this depth on this team looks a lot better, and for him not to be, getting as much playing time as you'd expect that he would have last year, it just tells you that the depth is better, and come fourth quarter, we're going to have fresh guys on the field to help preserve a win. So I'm looking forward to more depth, and that's the feeling I'm getting with this roster.
Yeah, that also grabbed my attention too. He came right out and was like, Carter over Thibs. It wasn't Carter playing McFadden, Okereke. It wasn't any of that. It was Thibs going to a different role, which, by the way, we kind of thought that would happen last year with Simmons, but Simmons really never popped, right? So said some good things in there. Next week, Alex will be making his comeback after 3 months. I'm not sure I remember what he looks like, so we'll have Alex on next week. Definitely. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, Alex, where are you? Appreciate you guys and the support you guys have all been giving us. Yeah, we got to definitely set up that dinner with Ryan. We promised we'd take him out to dinner to get more acclimated with what they're doing. And nygiantsrush.com. You can check that out. It's got plenty of articles up there. I got to get Spencer cranking on away on some stuff. If you want to see articles, by the way, send me a DM, put it in the chat. If you want some research or if you want some content on a specific player, let us know. We can definitely do that. I have to get Low and Stretch's stuff out. I forgot to do it last week. I ran out of time. Yeah. So I'll get that out this week. I think Zach is working, so we don't have Zach tonight. So we're by ourselves. So I'm going to look in the platform to end the show with, I'm going to go with a different route here, guys. I'm going with this.